The novel begins amidst an impending hurricane in rural New Hampshire. Casey, a woman in her late 30s, lives alone in a dilapidated cabin, besieged by rot, damp, and bad memories. Her landlord, Ruddy, refuses to fix the collapsing roof and repeatedly makes inappropriate advances toward her, exploiting her isolation and low rent. The first pages establish tone and rhythm. The storm mirrors Casey's mental state, brittle, defensive, and on the verge of implosion. McFadden's descriptive precision, the creak of wet timber, the flicker of failing bulbs, cements a sense of dread before the first twist even arrives. When Ruddy's harassment escalates to grabbing her wrist, Casey employs a self-defense move, disarming and immobilizing him momentarily. This marks the first flicker of her buried aggression, foreshadowing her latent violence. As thunder rolls, Casey glimpses what appears to be a face at her window, a pale blur vanishing as lightning fades. Her paranoia begins, the first appearance of the intruder. That night, when she checks her tool shed for stability, she notices movement inside. A flashlight beam sweeps across the window. Moments later, she discovers a small, bloodied girl holding a switchblade. The child calls herself Eleanor, though the name engraved on her knife simply reads Nell. Casey's instinctive empathy overrides her fear. She cleans the child's wounds, makes her instant noodles, and offers her dry clothing. The domestic quiet is eerie. A violent storm outside and a silent child covered in blood within. Casey's narration oscillates between protectiveness and hypervigilance. She spots old burns on Nell's arms, and the imagery echoes Casey's childhood trauma. Before bed, a detail strikes her, blood leaking from Nell's backpack. It is the novel's first symbol of contained horror. Something hidden, something that seeps. The flashback, Ella's life of neglect. Parallel to Casey's story runs that of Ella, a middle schooler living with her hoarder mother. Their house is stacked with garbage, thrifted objects, and animal filth. Ella's struggles are almost Dickensian, bullied at school for her smell, accused of theft, and shamed for poverty. When her classmate Anton Peterson, a notorious troublemaker, defends her during a fight, they form an uneasy friendship. McFadden humanizes Anton, a boy saddled with trauma, fighting cruelty with violence. He teaches Ella to pick locks, tries to protect her, and recognizes in her another wounded soul. But Ella's mother's mental illness and obsessive control escalate when she finds a cigarette butt. Assuming Ella smoked it, she burns Ella's arm with it as punishment. The psychological damage manifests as Ella's compulsion for order and control, traits that later define her as Casey, the adult living alone in the woods. Present time, power outage and revelation. The storm kills the power. Casey discovers a hand-drawn map in Nell's pack that marks her cabin and nearby areas. She interprets it as a sign that the girl had a plan to find her specifically. As she searches further, she finds a notebook filled with violent, graphic drawings, knives' eyes, and women screaming. One image shows a burning house, eerily resembling Ella's childhood home. This blending of past trauma into the present injects uncertainty. Is Nell haunting Casey's guilt, or is she a real danger? Later that night, Casey notices her gun missing from the drawer. Nell confronts her, points the gun, and forces Casey into a chair, binding her with duct tape. This reversal, protector becoming captive, reframes the title's ambiguity. Who truly is the intruder? Second flashback sequence, violence and fire. The before chapters deepen. Anton and Ella's relationship evolves into teenage orchestration of survival amid parental neglect. A confrontation with Anton's abusive father leads Anton to protect his younger brother Brad, a character whose later reveal becomes central. Brittany, the popular classmate, instigates conflict that ends in tragedy. Anton attacks her after discovering Ella's humiliation. He is arrested, and Ella, trapped again by her mother's violence, retaliates fatally. She sets fire to their house after locking her mother inside, a symbolic, cleansing fire that becomes her rebirth. She adopts her father's surname, Casey, and disappears, the dual past uncovered. McFadden gradually ties the duality together. Casey equals sign Ella, now reinvented, forever escaping childhood shame. The alternating timelines bleed into each other linguistically. Phrases, symbols like peaches and fire, and smells, soot, mold overlap. When Eleanor vanishes into the woods, Casey tracks her through the storm, reading the notebook for clues. She pieces together the truth. The map points not to her, but to Lee Trainor's cabin, her neighbors. And Lee is Alina's real target. The confrontation at Lee's cabin. Casey arrives to find Alina holding Lee at gunpoint. The girl accuses him of being her father and leaving her and her mother, Jolene, to suffer. The dialogue here exposes the novel's undercurrent theme, the generational pattern of abuse. Both Ella and Alina are daughters of neglect, mirrors of each other. Lee insists the truth. He isn't her father, but his brother was. He reveals that Jolene was attacked by her boyfriend. Jax and Alina fled assuming guilt. When police searched, she hid, terrified. Casey's descent and the moral collapse. Casey's instinct to help snaps into vigilante obsession. She tracks Jolene, finds her alive and abusive toward Alina. In one of McFadden's boldest moral swerves, Casey murders Jolene, a crime both impulsive and ritualistic. She justifies it as protection, but her tone blurs vengeance with righteousness. This is Freida McFadden's transformation moment. Casey ceases to be the erratic savior and becomes the monster she feared inside herself. The title, The Intruder, now functions allegorically. The true intruder is guilt, reborn as identity. Final revelation and closure. Months later, the storm has passed. Alina now lives with Lee. Casey homeschools her, seemingly calm and domesticated. But the veneer of peace fractures when Alina shows Casey a photo of her dead father, the same Anton Peterson from Ella's youth. The realization detonates a cycle of haunting continuity. The man Ella once loved and buried in memory fathered the girl now in her home. In the epilogue, Lee's true name, Brad, is revealed. He visits Anton in prison, where Anton is serving life for killing their abusive father. Anton had begged Brad to watch over Ella when he read about her reappearance years later. The brothers' hidden bond reveals the moral intricacy of McFadden's storytelling. Every act of protection masks another wound. Brad admits that he's fallen in love with Ella Casey, but honors his promise to Anton not to pursue her. The story closes quietly, but its emotional repercussions are seismic. Trauma begets trauma. Love dissolves into protection, and survival twists into concealment.